All right, Reckless students, we are back and we have a very special guest all the way from out in Oklahoma. We have Jay Arab, but we're going to call him Josh, right? Because otherwise I'm just going to sound really, really old saying it that way.
Right.
Josh, man, welcome to Reckless Student Ministry and welcome to Notions with Nathan. We appreciate having you on and good to see you, man. How's everything going out there?
Good. It's thank you first of all for having me, and what's up, kids? Hope to get to know some of you. You guys feel free to reach out to me, and love to talk to you guys and get to know you. We're doing good out here. Me and my wife moved out here in June in Oklahoma from Florida. We're going to Bible college right now. Been in the ministry for probably about 5 or 6 years. My wife about the same time. But yeah, we're liking Oklahoma. It's pretty awesome. I didn't think it would be this awesome, to be honest with you.
Well, you're doing quite a bit of things right now. You're in ministry right now, but you're also hip hop artist as well. That a Christian hip hop artist that is doing some awesome things. And I'll go ahead and show my age, like I told my students that I would. I told them I'm not super versed in hip hop music now compared to what I was. It was Tupac and Biggie when I was growing up. That shows my age.
Right.
If that tells you anything. And DC Talk was still together. So if that really wants you to know how old I am, that will let you know that DC Talk was still the main thing.
Hey, DC Talk's fire.
Hey, Liberty grads. So we got to give them that. Go Flames. But man, you have a very, very awesome story, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, because I followed you for a while now, and just see your story with what God has brought you through and brought you to where you are now. And if you don't mind, just share a little bit about who you are and your past and where God's brought you.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so I grew up actually in New Jersey. My dad wasn't around. He left the picture. He was out of my life. I was 2. I don't have memories of him. So I grew up without a dad, single mom. My mom did a great job being a single mother. But being a kid, especially a male, whether you're female or male, I'm a male, so that's my experience. But being a child without a dad, was always, missing something, feeling a lack of, love. There was that hole there. So I was always kind of sad growing up, wishing I could meet my dad. So my dad ended up coming in the picture for 1 year when I was 9 years old, and just long enough to have my sister Nicole. But then he was gone again by the time I was 10, maybe right before 10 years old. So again, I didn't have a father to grow up with, so there was the whole, growing up without a dad story, which I'm sure a lot of your kids can relate to, and a single mom. And my mom was very young when she had me. She was 17, so she was a young mom going through it for the first time, essentially, with me. And so there was rough patches, to say the least. She was learning, so obviously now I look back on that, I show grace, I show mercy. I love my mother. But I turned into a punk. I turned into looking for comfort and joy, guidance in all the wrong places. Ended up hanging out with the wrong crowd at a very young age. Started getting addicted to pornography and lust and that sort of stuff at the age of like 12 years old. So that kind of took off, and that's all I cared about. Just cared about girls, cared about looking cool, feeling cool, cared about what people thought about me more than anything, being the cool guy in school, making the class laugh. That's all I cared about. I had no guidance to be a man. I had no guidance to have responsibility, really. My mom did her best. But come 14, 15, I just kept rebelling. I started running away from home. I started sneaking out at night. One thing led to another. I was always getting kicked out or running away. So there's a lot of different issues with that. Ended up dropping out of high school my junior year. Started smoking pot. From there, again, bouncing on couches, sleeping outside, had a girlfriend I was with for years, having premarital sex, nothing good. And I ended up being on full-blown drugs. Started doing heroin, cocaine. I mean, the whole nine at a young age, 18, 19 years old.
Wow.
But it all started, I reflect on those things. It all started, because of the lack of a father, and it's all my responsibility, but it's important to look and reflect on,
Sure.
what led me there, so, and I say that because I'm sure there's a lot of kids right now who may even be watching this that struggle with the lack of a parent, lack of a, security. And it all comes down to that. I was very insecure. I was looking to be accepted by people, because I didn't feel accepted at home. But, long story short, ended up using a lot of drugs, selling a lot of drugs, basically selling drugs just to stay high. I was full blown addicted, like physically addicted. So the whole nine, ended up in and out of jail, in and out of rehabs, mental institutions, had bipolar, schizophrenia, depression, anxiety. These are the things they, diagnosed me with.
Sure.
So, it was just a long mess from the age of like 18 to 22 of, consequences for my actions, in and out of jail. Got raided by a big SWAT team at one point. Like it was ridiculous. It got so bad finally to the point where I was homeless in the middle of like the hood in New Jersey in a certain town. And I was homeless in an abandoned warehouse, dead of winter.
Wow.
Literally, just like I dragged a mattress from like a couple blocks down the road that was like out for the dump. That's what I slept on in this warehouse. And all I cared about was getting high every day. And I was panhandling on a corner. I was stealing from the mall just so I can give clothes and different things to drug dealers so I can stay high. So I literally like hit the lowest of lows, completely homeless, completely alone, absolutely nobody around. And so went to jail one last time, went to jail a total of 14 times, probably spent a total of 2 years. Yeah. So that last time, and I'd always go to jail and I'd find God, I'd get closer with God. And, eventually I finally gave up and gave it all to God. And I also failed to mention, this is a very important part. I grew up going to youth group and going to camps. My mother, that was one thing she tried to instill in me and was the most important thing she instilled in me at a young age. So I would go to the FCA. I don't know if you're familiar, Fellowship of Christian Athletes.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, those seeds are what I'm convinced saved my life. And I had to pray grandma. So praying grandmas are always in there somewhere.
They're the best, right? My spiritual heroes, my grandmother. So
Yep.
absolutely.
Amen. So yeah, I got out of jail the last time. Decided that was it. Called my mom, who I hadn't spoken to in years, and she actually brought me down to Florida, and I just started over. I hit the ground, and all the things that were planted into me at a young age, they started surfacing a little bit during my times in jail, my times in rehab. I'd start seeking God, reading the Bible, learning more, and but every time I'd go back out, I'd just go back to it, so it was like a flesh for spirit thing. And then finally I just gave it up, and God led me to a great church in Lake Worth, Florida, South Florida. And I just got really plugged in there. Had some great pastors, people who really believed in me, loved on me, believed in me, most importantly, and just invested in me in a lot of different ways, invested in me. And, I ended up being full-time staff there years later, and, living for God, going to high schools, sharing my testimony, being in the youth ministry, and, now I'm at Bible college. So
I think that's awesome. And it's a good word even for our student ministers and our lay ministers that might be listening to this as well, is that there's a lot of times that we can all get discouraged as pastors, as ministers, in what we do, because we don't think the kids are getting it, that they're paying attention, that any of it's breaking through. And it's an encouragement to hear you say that it was even though you were in church, and even though you had all these other choices that were made that got you going, it was still that basis that you knew that something was there. And I think that's a great word to be able to say, hey, even though we want to reach every single kid, and we absolutely want to reach every single kid, it may be that we have to remember we're just planting that seed.
Right.
God has to do the work in it, and that's a great story to hear, and I think that's an encouraging word for student ministers to be able to hear. So.
And hey, I've been at I've done the youth summer camps. Okay, I know it's not easy, and there's a couple of those kids that are just real hard headed, but that was me, So I really believe, as a youth, I've had to remind myself that countless times as a youth minister is like, especially the ones that probably bother you the most, like 10 years down the road when there's nothing left, that's what they're gonna be holding on to. So
absolutely. And of course, we joke around and say, listen, we can deal with the hard-headed ones. It's the ones that don't want to take a shower except in the pool. That's the ones at the summer camps we can't handle. So.